Welcome learners, I'm Dipankar Vasumatari, teaching English in Gajera Global School, Surat. Okay, in this video we'll discuss the difficult words, unfamiliar words, and in a subsequent video we'll discuss the questions. Here are some unfamiliar words and phrases that you will come across here. The first phrase is perpetual, state of poverty. Perpetual means permanent, endless, so endless poverty. Slog means to toil hard, to work hard over a period of time. And then imposed the baggage on the child is a figurative way of saying the child inherited the burden of the father. So sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. This is Sahib talking, and for them finding a rupee is like finding a fortune. And he had come from Bangladesh, and he had to migrate from Bangladesh because his home was swept away by a flood. And his family came so early to Delhi that he doesn't even remember when he came. So that is why the writer says his home is not even a distant memory. It means he doesn't remember anything. And then they look for gold, looking for a better life and fortune. So they have come to India to look for gold, which means to look for a better future. And looking for gold means looking for a better life and better fortune. So when the writer meets him, she says glibly. Glibly means often thoughtlessly, superficially or insincerely. So she says to him that he should go to school. And poor Sahib Alam says that he cannot go to school because there is no school at his place, in his neighborhood. Okay, the writer says that she will build a school for him, and he was really hopeful. He believed her that she would really build a school for him. But after a few days, when he comes and asks her if she had built her school, he is kind of embarrassed because she had made a promise that she could not keep. And the boy's full name was Sahib Alam, which meant Lord of the Universe. Ironically, though his name meant Lord of the Universe, he was a rag picker, looking for fortune in rags, in rubbish dumps. Here there's another word, bleak, which means unencouraging, gloomy or dark, something that is very depressing and sad. And there's a common question asked in the examinations: what is the meaning of his name, Sahib Alam? It means the Lord of the Universe. And then she asks, when the writer notices that Sahib Alam doesn't wear any shoes. She asks him why he doesn't have any shoes. He is very uncomfortable. He shuffles his feet with discomfort and says that he doesn't have shoes. He doesn't have shoes anymore. He has never worn any shoes in his life. The writer tries to find a reason why people don't wear shoes. For some people, a pair of shoes was unaffordable because of their poverty, and some people say that they do not wear shoes because it's a kind of a tradition. There is another story the writer talks about, and this boy is from Udupi, and this boy also didn't have any shoes, but when he grows up, he becomes the priest of the temple, and then he can afford shoes for his children. Here is a phrase that you should know: drowned in an air of desolation, which means suffering great unhappiness or loneliness. There is another phrase: the goddess had granted his prayer. What prayer is the writer talking about? The writer is talking about the boy's prayer for a pair of shoes. Acquaintance, a person one knows slightly but who is not a close friend. Then there is another word, periphery, which means borders. Metaphorically means symbolically. Here, in reality, squatters. A squatter is a person who occupies a place that is unused or uninhabited. Wilderness means forest. And then this is the condition they live in. They live in shacks, almost broken down houses with tarpaulin roofs. And the tarpaulin means heavy duty waterproof cloth, originally of tarred canvas. And then aching means hurting. Tattered means old and torn, in poor condition. Transit, temporary homes. So these people come here, live here for some time, and then they go away. And then it has acquired a proportion of fine art. Here the writer says that rap picking has become a kind of a fine art. This is a hyperbole, a figure of speech in which rap picking is compared to fine art. Here also another hyperbole. Garbage has been compared with gold because for them garbage is the only way of making a living. And finding a rupee is like a big deal among the garbage dump. Here the writer is talking about after Sahib has got a job, and after getting his job, it seems the writer feels that he is not so happy because he has lost his carefree look. This is a common question. The question is, does he like the job? And the answer is no, he doesn't like the job because he is now burdened by responsibility. Okay. Now Sahib is no longer his master, that is why he hates his job. Now we are moving on to this a different story of a different boy. This boy's name is Mukesh, and this has an ambition of becoming a motor mechanic, which is a big deal for somebody like Mukesh. It's like a mirage. That is what the writer says, because he lives in a place called Firozabad. And Firozabad is known for glass bangles, a glass blowing industry, and there also these people live in squalid conditions, dingy cells, gloomy and drab. They live in hovels, a small squalid or simply constructed dwelling, and they live in a primeval state of the earliest time in history. Like their condition is like the people in the earliest time in history, and then they live in shacks, also a roughly built hut or cabin made of galvanized sheets thatched with dead grass. They do not even have earth. They use grass to thatch their houses. So that is the condition of Mukesh's house, and they do not have enough food to eat. Over the house, Mukesh's father was kind of lucky. He was able to build a shack for himself and his family, and they think that the condition, the poverty, is kind of God-given. They think that they cannot change their destiny. Here are some highlighted lines. I've highlighted these lines because the writer is using an image where the writer describes a place which is full of bangles of different colors. Yes, they produce colorful bangles, but there is no color in their own lives. And this is an occupational hazard the writer talks about. They end up becoming blind once they become athletes because of working in dark hours, dark factories for long, in the light of candles, in low light. Here's another unfamiliar word, which is drab, means drearily dull, boringly dull, painfully dull. A tongue is a kind of a forceps-like thing that you can use to lift objects. And sanctity is the purity. The sanctity means purity. And the writer says that because of their toil, because of the condition, they have lost the initiative. They have lost the ability to dream. Like I told you in the previous video, when she asks them why don't they do something about their own future, and they complain that they are forced to remain poor. There is a vicious circle of middlemen who trap them in their poverty, and even if they try to do something, they are arrested by the police as if they are committing a crime, winding in a continuous curve. And apathy means indifference. Listening to them, and then this is another metaphor the writer has used here: web or poverty. Poverty is referred to a spider's web from which they cannot go out. They are like insects trapped in it. Stigma is a stain, and these are the people who keep the poor. The sahukars, the middlemen, the policemen, the keepers of law, the bureaucrats, and the politicians. They keep them poor because for these poor people earn nothing but vote banks. Let's see what more we have. Okay, here's another metaphor here. Few airplanes fly over Firozabad. That means the people in Firozabad don't dare to dream. Is a metaphor. Okay, in this video we'll discuss the questions. What could be some of the reasons for migration of people from villages to cities? This is the reason. Natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, landslides. Then we have man-made disasters like wars, persecution, construction of dams and accidents, search of a better job, more income, a better standard of living. These are the reasons that for which people migrate. And then would you agree that promises made to the poor children are rarely kept? Yeah, I would agree. Why do you think this happens? Because most people don't want them to get out of poverty. They want to exploit them, and then the poor did not have any means of finding a solution. What forces conspire to keep the workers in the banking industry or operators abandoned poverty? So these are the forces: the sahukars, the middlemen, the policemen, the keepers of law, the bureaucrats, and the politicians. Their own poverty and their own lack of enterprise to some extent. Now we are moving on to the next section, talking about the text. So how can Mukesh realize his dream? He has to leave his home and he has to join a garage as an apprentice. Maybe that will help him realize his dream. We cannot say for sure. Hazards of working in the glass vehicles industry: lung infection, loss of eyesight, burning, low income, lack of social security. And how can you eliminate child labor? Why should you eliminate child labor? Because they are the future. They need to be educated. Without education, the country will lag behind, which has happened. And how can you do that? Through government investment in education, which will make free education possible for all, like in Canada, the US, and some Scandinavian countries. Here, education is free for all. Let's see what else we have. Yes, there is an exercise. These are figures of speech, which we discussed in different videos. One is the hyperbole, the metaphor, and the simile. Since we already know about them, I'm just repeating. Hyperbole is basically an exaggeration. He is as light as a feather. We are comparing the man to a feather. It means that this is a hyperbole because a man cannot be as light as a feather. In metaphor also we compare things, but the comparison is kind of indirect. He is a feather. Instead of saying he's like a feather, we can say he is a feather. Figure of speech has now become a metaphor. And if we say he's like a feather, we are using a simile. So we need to figure out what these are, if they are metaphors, if they are similes or hyperboles. Sahib-e-Alam means the Lord of the Universe. It's directly in contrast to what Sahib is in reality. And this is ironic. This is ironic. Why ironic? Because his name and his meaning are in sharp contrast to each other. Drowned in an air of desolation. Here desolation has been compared to air. So metaphor. Miles away from it. It's ironic. Simapur is a place near Delhi, but in some areas it's like very far away from Delhi. Wrapped in wonder, metaphor, like the tongues, simile. Look at the word light here as a simile. Not light in her ears, metaphor. Her happiness has been compared to light. And few airplanes, metaphor. Dreams have been compared to airplanes here. Web of poverty again, a metaphor. Scrounging for gold, hyperbole, metaphor. Hyperbole here, metaphor again, metaphor, and again, metaphor. Plastic bag, metaphor again. Compared to freedom. That's it for today. Thank you.